ממש פצצה.
תודה.
يعني تقدرش تقول لمرة تتسا مش محترم.
I only carry camera and that's a kind of weapon, or at least that's what I think.
Hello. Today, 3 films about political strife handled completely differently. A comedy about the Middle East conflict, a look at the daily lives of young Syrians as their city is attacked by Assad's army, and a documentary about France's Yellow Vest movement. Tell us more is France 24's film critic Lisa Nesselson. Hello, Lisa.
Marie.
Now, the title Tel Aviv on Fire doesn't sound funny, but apparently this film from Israel is a comedy.
Well, I laughed a lot. It's a satire on the state of Israeli-Palestinian relations told via the very unlikely device of the beleaguered cast and crew of a cheesy nightly soap opera filmed in Ramallah. Now, I was on a plane 20 years ago next to a man from Israel, and I told him how impressed I was by the number of truly talented filmmakers from Israel, considering what a small country it is. And he said, we may be a small country, but what other country so small is in the newspapers all over the world every single day? He had a point. The average person may not know which factions hate each other in many other parts of the world, but everybody knows that in general, the relationship between Israelis and Palestinians is problematic.
So how do you take this seemingly unsolvable conundrum and make it funny?
Well, by acknowledging that both sides are stuck with each other and affectionately lampooning stereotypes about attitudes about how each group wants to be depicted. Unambitious slacker Salam lives with his mother in Jerusalem, but drives to the West Bank each day for his new job as a lowly production assistant on the soap opera Tel Aviv on Fire, set in 1967 around the Six-Day War. It's stilted and melodramatic, but it has this devoted following, both in Israel and the territories. Salam's innocent query to a female Israeli checkpoint guard as to whether it's a compliment or an insult in Hebrew to say a woman's beauty is explosive is the wrong choice of words. So he gets hauled into the office of the checkpoint commander, Asi, and when an annotated script for the next day's show is found in Salam's car, well, Asi thinks he's got the showrunner and he's got a direct line to how the intrigue's going to involve, and it turns out his wife and female relatives are all huge fans of the show. Salam is not about to confess that he's just an errand boy, really.
Okay, well, let's take a look at Tel Aviv on Fire. This is the moment Israeli soldier Asi gives Salam some script writing tips.
קרה שהתסריט שלך לא טוב. הוא לא נכון. אתה לא מבין כלום בצבא, אתה,
לא, כנראה שלא.
כנראה שלא, בטוח שלא. תקשיב לי טוב, יהודה הוא אלוף בצה"ל. לא איזה בולשיט ערבי. גם מה זה הדרגות האלה שתקעתם עליו? הוא נראה כמו איזה גנרל בצבא העיראקי. הוא אלוף בצה"ל, הוא צריך להיות גבר, הוא צריך להיות רומנטי, הוא צריך להיות ג'נטלמן. אתה מבין? שידבר איתה על העבר שלהם, שיקח אותה לסיבוב על הטנק שלו, אני יודע.
אתה טנק?
סתם אני זורק טנק, לא משנה בשביל הדוגמה, העיקר שיהיה רומנטי, שילמד אותה לראות. שיקח אותה למטווח, זה רומנטי. העיקר שלא יהיה משעמם. אני אגיד לך מה, אנשים לא אוהבו דברים משעממים. זה תדע לך חוק.
So, Lisa, each time Salam crosses the border, he has to listen to Asi's pointers on how to make the Israeli characters more appealing.
Exactly, and Salam succeeds by cajoling and getting some of Asi's ideas into the formerly anti-Semitic show. So when the head writer quits in disgust over what she calls Zionist propaganda, Salam is promoted to the writing staff, which would be great news if only he weren't completely dependent on Asi's pro-Jewish brainstorming. It's a joke within a joke, a hit TV series in a crowd-pleasing movie, and it's a great conversation starter and very funny.
Certainly sounds it. Well, next to Still Recording, it's a documentary about 2 art students who in 2011 left Damascus for Douma, a suburb under rebel control, and they took part in the Syrian revolution. Now, war, siege and famine follow. They filmed 450 hours of footage, giving us an on-the-ground view of one of the global tragedies of our time. This does sound like tough but required viewing, Lisa.
Absolutely. When these dedicated young filmmakers decided to document the blossoming revolution, they had no way of knowing that the violent oppression would go on and on and on and become their lives. Over a period of 2 years, the 450 hours were whittled down to 2 hours. It's not always that easy to follow and rarely easy to watch, but these mostly aren't images you're likely to see in standard TV coverage, which is why they are so valuable. A city of 750,000 people was reduced to rubble by the Syrian army loyal to Bashar al-Assad, leaving a starving, besieged population of just 250,000.
Okay, well, here's a taste of still recording.
شو هيدا اللي عم نشوفه نحن هلا؟
فيلم عن مجموعة. قد ايه انت بهي الحرب ممكن تكون قوي، انك انت ما تخاف. وخلص يعني بدي موت بس بدي موت وانا مبسوط.
اللي بيفكرونا دائما نحن عصابات مسلحه، لا مو عصابات مسلحه، نحن رياضيين، نحن ناس نعشق الحريه.
Now, some of the early images are actually upbeat and celebratory. The rebels who liberated the Duma police station and the post office believed that with God's help, their revolution to defeat Bashir and bring greater freedom to the people of Syria is well on its way. Alas, they're horribly wrong about that, as the increasingly desperate scenes shown here demonstrate. Life goes on, though. Young people enjoy themselves as best they can. Our protagonists start a radio station, a recording studio, paint colorful murals, work with children. But Russian bombardments, Syrian tanks, and a deadly sarin gas attack that leaves 1,500 dead makes any sort of optimism increasingly difficult.
And the film also shows us how modern technology is helping the world see social upheaval like this.
Absolutely. The closing credits are sobering because they list the people who died in the course of making this film, and some of them under torture, even with, these small modern pieces of equipment. A sniper on the front who's speaking to his mother on the phone says he's in bed resting when we can see he's working on getting a target in his sights. The film is dedicated to those who take up a camera to shoot instead of weapons.
Okay, that film is called Still Recording. Now, the Yellow Vest movement in France, which started in November, seems to be getting more international coverage than the events in Syria. People have been injured, property destroyed. And there's a film out in France this week about the Gilets Jaunes from François Ruffin. He is an impartial documentary filmmaker, is he?
Not at all. He is clearly on the side of the working man and woman. He went out to interview Yellow Vest protesters in late December for a week, not in Paris or big cities, but in the boondocks and at the toll stations where so many protesters gathered. Ordinary people can't afford gas, let alone tolls. That's what started all of this. Nobody Ruffin interviews is remotely violent or interested in destroying property. They just want the government to lend an ear to the reality of their lives. Using excerpts of President Emmanuel Macron and pundits speaking, Ruffin shows how the government set out to marginalize and discredit the protesters by calling them names, including fascist and the negation of what France stands for. There's deep anger against the policies dictated by Brussels, against the fallout from globalization, against Macron's minimal interest in the working poor. But there's harmony among protesters who brave the cold to take a stand. And Ruffin says it's a movement of people accustomed to hardship. He says his feet were frozen after just an hour, but these people can stand there day in and day out all night.
Well, let's take a look. Here's a glimpse of Je veux du soleil, or I want sunshine.
Porte-voix d'une foule haineuse. Là, on apprend à se connaître et ça fait du bien à tout le monde.
S'en prennent aux élus, aux forces de l'ordre.
Là, tu vois, par exemple, c'est parce que j'ai eu ma pizza gratuite, sinon ça faisait 3 jours que j'avais pas mangé.
Aux juifs, aux étrangers, aux homosexuels.
Qu'est-ce qui vous fait vous livrer à la délinquance comme ça?
Délinquance, non, c'est pas une délinquance, c'est une reprise du pouvoir.
So what do we learn about these individual protesters?
We learn a lot. How after a lifetime of work, retirement benefits are scant. How a mother who is 7.5 months pregnant is told by the authorities to go get a job because she doesn't qualify for benefits, but no one wants to hire her. One woman gets by on gift certificates she wins playing bingo. Several people complain that under Macron, money is clearly the highest value, and that they find a pathetic foundation for a society.
And the director has quite an unusual background himself, doesn't he?
Oh, indeed he does. Ruffin runs a cheeky satirical quarterly magazine he founded 20 years ago called Fakir. He made a surprise hit documentary called Merci Patron, or Thanks Boss, in 2016 and was subsequently elected to the French National Assembly, winning against an opponent from Macron's party. Barely 5 minutes into this film, a protester says his family's budget is so tight we can't even afford to go out to the movies anymore. And this was a reoccurring complaint in the French and international press when the movement started. Low-income Americans will say they can't pay for cable service, but French people, I've noticed, make direct references to leaving the house as a family to see a movie. In France, going out to the cinema is right up there with food and rent as a cornerstone of a decent life.
Okay, that's Je veux du soleil, or I want sunshine. Next, the black and white masterpiece Roma won 3 Oscars this year. The only French film to win Best Picture a few years back was The Artist, and that was black and white. Is black and white back in fashion?
I think black and white must be the new black, right? I'm not sure how the idea took hold that black and white somehow is less good or less valuable than color. People who roll their eyes at the prospect of a black and white movie wouldn't dare suggest that a photo by Ansel Adams or Henri Cartier-Bresson isn't worth looking at. And most people probably love famous portraits in black and white of James Dean or Marilyn Monroe or Muhammad Ali. In short, black and white gets a knee-jerk bad rap because black and white can be gorgeous and incredibly evocative. So here in Paris, the Forum des Images has had the excellent idea to show 4 weeks of movies in black and white through April 28th. And guess what? Many of them are masterpieces and plenty are pretty darn good. 30 in all. Historical films, German films, including Edgar Wright's brilliant 2-part Heimat, rock and roll, as well as Jim Jarmusch's 2003 Coffee and Cigarettes and his 2016 Patterson with parts in black and white, and Matthew Kasowitz's 1995 La Haine.
Okay. Lisa, thank you. And we're going to leave you with some of the festival's black and white highlights. Remember our website. We're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.
Je me souviens des jours anciens et je pleure.